Hello everyone, I'm your storyteller, and tonight we dive into the dark side of online dating. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me where and when you're watching. Now, loosen up, close your eyes for a moment, and let the darkness lead you into these stories. Episode 1. A Fake Face, but Real Blood. My name is Alina Parker. If you are listening to me tell this, it means you are ready to hear the words of a lingering soul. I once lived in a small town, on the outskirts of Ohio, a place where people thought nothing evil could creep in. But I knew. Sometimes the devil doesn't come from hell, it just stands right at your doorstep, wearing a mask. That Halloween, I was 19 years old, the first time living alone. A tiny house, with only a living room connected to the kitchen, and a cramped bedroom. The old tin roof rattled every time the wind blew. Many friends my age were getting ready to go to parties, drink alcohol, dress up as vampires or witches. But I, afraid of the noise and wanting to save money, chose to stay home and give candy to the neighborhood kids. All evening, the town was lively with the sound of doorbells. I heard little feet running on dry leaves, the rustling of nylon fabric from cheap costumes. When I opened the door, I inhaled all kinds of scents. The rich smell of chocolate candy, the pungent plastic of masks, the sweat of children who wouldn't stop running from house to house, all blended into a flavor of childhood everyone had once experienced. I smiled, I handed out candy, and I thought, yes, turns out living alone isn't so bad. Around 10 p.m., the children were gone. The street in front of my house was quiet. Only the dim yellow light of the street lamps shone down on the thin trees. The sound of wind whistling through the window was like someone whispering. I turned off the porch light, sat hugging a blanket, and got ready to watch the horror movie I had been saving all week. Time passed, 11 o'clock, then midnight. I glued my eyes to the screen, heart racing with each scene. When the clock neared 2 a.m., I thought I would go to bed. But at that very moment, a knock on the door echoed. Not a normal knock. It was urgent, heavy, as if someone was pounding with a fist against the wood. The sound reverberated through the little house, making the dishes on the shelf rattle softly. My heart leaped. Cold sweat prickled on my neck. Who would knock at this hour? In my head, I suddenly remembered the news on the radio a few days earlier. A girl in town has mysteriously gone missing. Police suspect a kidnapping. My hand trembled as it touched the doorknob. A bad feeling surged up, forcing me to fasten the safety chain before opening the door slightly. The porch light flickered. Through the narrow gap, a strange face pressed close. I froze. It wasn't a human face. It was a mask of skin. The skin was gray, wrinkled, as if it had been left under the sun too long. 2 hollow eye sockets. A mouth painted with a twisted smile. But what made me nauseous was the smell. The stench of burned flesh mixed with the metallic temps of blood, seeping straight through the crack. The man tilted his head slightly, his voice hoarse. Happy Halloween. In his hand, a dark leather bag pulsed. I heard the faint rustling inside, as if something wet was moving. I trembled, trying to keep my voice calm. You are too old to be trick-or-treating. Go home. He chuckled low, the sound like a blade scraping against metal. You don't know how long it took me to make this face. I need more material. And you have a beautiful face. My throat tightened. His breath slipped through the crack, rancid like rotting animal carcass. I shouted quickly, "Get out of my house, or I'll call the police." Instead of leaving, he shoved his hand through the gap, clawing at my neck. The dry, rough fingers, with sharp nails, pressed hard into my WIND-PIPE. I choked violently, vision blurring. The chain strained and creaked, about to snap. I punched wildly, scratching at his arm. In desperation, I opened my mouth and bit down hard. Flesh tore, blood spurted. The cold metallic taste spread across my tongue. He screamed, letting go. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, my chest burning. Outside, he whispered something I still remember clearly. "We will meet again. I need your face to complete my collection." His footsteps faded into the night, but the stench of blood, the smell of burned flesh, still lingered in the house. I was still crouched on the floor, my chest tightening, every breath like a blade cutting through me. In my ears, the knocking had gone silent, replaced by dogs barking furiously somewhere at the end of the street. I thought he had vanished, but no. Hurried footsteps echoed right outside the door, then abruptly stopped. A shadow flickered past a small window. I thought he had returned, but then my neighbor's voice called out, "Alina." What happened? I heard screaming. I scrambled up, opened the door. Across the street, doors swung open, lights flashing on, men clutching baseball bats, kitchen knives, even one holding a rusty shotgun. The quiet little neighborhood suddenly erupted into chaos for a few minutes. Shaking, I pointed outward. There was a man. He wore a mask. Tried to break into my house. The sound of fleeing footsteps had already melted into the night wind. Only one object lay abandoned in the middle of the path before my door. A bag. It was made of dark leather, wrinkled, with frayed seams. I stepped closer, but the stench rising from it twisted my stomach. Not leather, not plastic. It was the smell of burned human flesh, acrid, mingled with the metallic reek of blood. I had to cover my nose with my hand, my eyes stinging. A neighbor shone a flashlight on it. The beam swept across the surface, and my breath caught tiny pores, still visible on the skin, even a small mole near the seam. There was no mistaking it. This had once been human skin. Someone cursed under their breath, then immediately called the police. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up in front of my house, red and blue lights flashing. The wail of the siren still echoed in my ears as I sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, my body shaking in waves. The smell of the officer's cigarette nearby mixed with the stench of burned skin from the bag, making me gag until I dry heaved. They took my statement, detail by detail, the knocking, the face, the voice. I recounted it through tears, speaking as I clutched my throat where his hand had left bruises. A young officer opened the bag, the neon glow from the patrol car spilling inside. What lay within nearly made me faint. Scraps of human skin piled haphazardly, still damp, some with strands of glossy brown hair clinging. Jesus! He staggered back, vomiting onto the grass. The old police chief's face tightened. His voice gravelly, "Matches the description of the girl who went missing last week. Get samples to the lab immediately." I felt my heart hammer, each thud slamming my ribs, my ears ringing. The image from the TV news just days ago returned, the face of the missing girl, her innocent smile. I shuddered as I realized I might have just seen her again, but not as a person, only as that grotesque layer of skin stretched across the intruder's face. That night, I did not sleep. Even with 2 officers stationed outside, I still smelled the acrid stench lingering in the house, as if he were standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those hollow eyes behind the mask, staring straight into me. The police tried to reassure me, "You're lucky to be alive," but I knew luck was not something that would last, because he had said it clearly, "We will meet again." And I believed it. The promise of a man wearing human skin is always the truth. 2 days later, the news spread across town. The masked man had been caught. They said he had been hiding in an old house on the outskirts, the windows always covered with heavy curtains. No one had ever seen him step outside. The police invited me to the station for identification. The moment I stepped into the interrogation room, the sharp scent of disinfectant, the harsh white glare of fluorescent lights, all of it made me dizzy. He sat there, hands cuffed, head bowed. When he lifted it, I saw that his real skin beneath the mask was even more horrifying. Pale, bruised, his eyes sunken deep, his gaze fixed on me. A faint, tight-lipped smile flickered across his face, enough to send a chill down my spine. I knew then he didn't need a mask, because his real face was already a demon's mask. The police recounted, when they raided the house, they heard the wheezing groan of a compressor in the basement, the stench of cold flesh mixed with gas, the rusty temps of old blood clinging to the walls. They broke the door open, and what they saw made many turn away to vomit. A large freezer. Inside it, 2 bodies, one young girl still fresh, and another corpse frozen stiff. The skin turned grayish-blue, as if it had been kept there for over a year. Around the room hung countless pieces of skin stretched on wooden frames, small bulbs shining on them, the light reflecting off oily patches, making them look as if they were breathing. In the center, a long table. On it lay scalpels, needles, bloody gloves. A thick notebook lay open, filled with scrawled handwriting, meticulous notes on how to peel skin, how to soak it in chemicals, even diary-like ramblings, in which he called each piece of skin a masterpiece, and each face a completed mask. I was shown an excerpt for the case file. I dry-heaved the entire night. When I finish stitching, it will look at me with the old eyes. They will live again if I complete the collection. I was asked to face him once more, not to identify, but to hear him speak. The police believed he would confess when confronted with a survivor. I stepped into the room, the air thick with the stale reek of the duty officer's cigarette. He looked up, eyes gleaming strangely. His voice was hoarse, slow, as if whispering directly into my ear. You bid me. I liked that feeling. Pain, but real. Don't worry, I'm not done. You will be the final face. I screamed, but the officers grabbed my shoulders, dragging me out. The steel door slammed shut, the sound reverberating, pounding into my chest. He was sentenced, guilty of serial murder, locked away in solitary confinement, but from that day on, I never slept peacefully again. At night, when the wind whistled through the cracks, I would hear pounding knocks at the door, hear the low, rasping laughter from a dry throat. Sometimes, in the mirror, I would glimpse a stitched face pressing close behind me. I recount all this not for pity. I only want to remind you, if one Halloween night, after all the children have gone home, you still hear an urgent knock at your door, don't open it. Never. Because what might be standing out there doesn't want candy, it only wants your face. Episode 2. The House in the Woods and the Candy of Blood. My name is Noah, 8 years old, that Halloween. If you ask why I am telling this story in the voice of a spirit, there is only one reason. The night I went trick-or-treating alone in the woods left a scar that can never be erased. I was not a good child. Everyone called me the little devil, a name that made me angry, yet felt true, because my parents always defended me in everything. I shoved a neighbor kid to the ground. Mom said it was because he was too slow. I stole someone's toy. Dad said they should thank me for testing its durability. Spoiled. I thought I was the center of the world. But I didn't know that this very thing made me the child the whole neighborhood despised. That Halloween, every house had pumpkin lanterns hung up, the scent of candles filling the air. I smelled candy sweetness drifting from porches, heard kids chattering excitedly about where to go first. I eagerly asked, "Let me come with you. I want to trick-or-treat too." They turned, their eyes cold, and a blonde girl dropped just 3 words. "We don't need you." I froze, listening to their snickering behind me. That feeling of being excluded, treated like a disease, was more bitter than any sour candy. I ran home, hid in the bathroom, tears running down my cheeks. But children's tears never last long. Soon after, rage surged through me, making my whole body shake. "You dare mock me. I'll get more candy than all of you combined." I took a deep breath. The scent of wax from the new pumpkin lanterns Dad had bought still clinging in my nose. I put on a bright red Dracula cloak, collar raised high, clutching a plastic pumpkin bucket. My little heart pounded furiously in my chest. I told myself, tonight, I will prove it. But houses in the neighborhood closed their doors early. When I came by, the looks the owners gave me were nothing like the ones they gave the other kids, full of contempt. Some tossed me exactly 2 hard candies, cold as stones. Some waved me off. Go home, brat. Your dad could buy you an entire candy store. Hearing that bitter laugh, my eyes burned. I turned and bolted, running out of the neighborhood, through the rusty iron gate, plunging into the woods behind town. The cold wind slapped my face, carrying the smell of damp and rotting leaves. Branches cracked sharply underfoot, making my heart jolt with every step. The moon hung high, pale light filtering through the canopy, shining on a winding path like it was leading into a beast's den. I stopped beneath an old oak, panting. In my ears, my heartbeat pounded like war drums, drowning out the distant hoot of an owl. I was about to turn back when I heard voices, not children, but adults, shouting angrily. Following the faint light, I saw an old wooden house nestled deep in the forest, its windows glowing with yellow light. Behind the curtain, the shadow of a man and a woman struggling, arms flailing. Then a slap landed. A scream rang out, mingling with the clatter of objects crashing. My chest tightened. But then my eyes fixed on something else. On the dining table inside, a large bowl piled high with colorful candy, glistening under the light. My tongue slid across my lips. My stomach growled empty. I forgot all fear, forgot even the blood trickling from the woman's mouth after the blow. The only thing I saw was the treasure I craved, a mountain of candy enough to outshine every kid in town. And at that very moment, I stepped across a line I should never have crossed. I crouched down, following the rotten wooden wall of the house. The acrid smell of cigarette smoke leaked out from the door, crack, mixing with the damp, moldy scent of the night forest, making my throat dry. The closer I got, the clearer I heard the curses, the crash of overturned chairs, the screech of metal like a knife scraping a pan. The front door was locked tight. I groped my way to the back and discovered an old dog door right by the steps. From inside, a foul warmth seeped out. The stench of spoiled food mingled with the reek of strong liquor. I pressed my ear to the floor, heard footsteps on the stairs, a bedroom door slamming shut. A tense silence stretched. I bit my lip, heart pounding wildly. This was the chance. I crawled through the gap, my knees burning raw from scraping against wood. The moment I slipped inside, it was as if the whole air swallowed me into its thick, suffocating weight. The walls were smoke-stained. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling. The yellow light flickered dim and sickly, and right there on the dining table, the bowl of candy gleamed like moonlight in the dark. I held my breath, ducked under the table, ears straining to be sure the upstairs had gone still. Only the steady tick-tock of the pendulum clock remained, blending with the frantic hammering of my chest. When I was certain no one was coming down, I stretched out, grabbed the bowl, and poured it all clattering into my pumpkin bucket. The sound of candy raining down echoed in the quiet room, making me shiver, as if the whole house had heard it. The bucket overflowed. I picked up a chocolate bar larger than my hand. Its sweet cocoa scent made my stomach twist with hunger. I shoved it into my mouth, the sugar melting, tainted with a trace of old liquor, clinging to the candy, as if it had sat too long. But I didn't care. All I knew was, I had won. I had more candy than any kid in the neighborhood. I set the bowl softly back on the table, ready to crawl out the back door when bang, a deafening crack tore through the night. My ears rang. My head reeled. A shrill scream echoed down the stairs, then cut off. Next came the dragging, heavy and wet, creak, creak, as if something large and sodden was being pulled. Panic surged. I scrambled beneath a chair, clutching the candy bucket with trembling hands. The stench of rust flooded down, thick and coppery. Fresh blood, pungent enough to make me retch. The heavy steps stopped in the middle of the room. Through the slit beneath the tablecloth, I saw a pair of worn brown leather shoes, soaked in blotches of red. A rough hand dragged something weighty across the floor. It was long, wet hair, streaks of blood dripping, pattering onto the wooden. Planksi froze. Breath locked in my chest. The man stopped right beside the table, his hoarse voice growling, laced with liquor and blood. Who ate my candy? I bit my lip until blood burst in my mouth, the iron taste filling me. I knew, if he bent down, if he glanced under the table, I would be the next victim. The man stopped right in front of the table. His breath wheezed. It reeked of alcohol, mixed with blood. Each exhale spilled onto the cold, damp floor. My chest felt like it would burst. I struggled to hold my breath. The sound of leather shoes dragged in a circle around the table. A chair toppled. Wood clattered loudly. I trembled violently. I clutched the candy bucket tight against me, as if it could shield me. Then the darkness beneath the table suddenly lit up. He bent low. His hollow eyes stared straight into mine. His pupils burned red, like half-extinguished embers. His voice hissed through clenched teeth. Well, little brat, you stole my candy, didn't you? In that instant, my body bolted from under the table like a frightened animal. I kicked him in the face. Then I hurled myself toward the kitchen. He roared in fury. Footsteps pounded after me. I remembered the dog door at the back. But when I lunged for it, the kitchen lock had already snapped shut. The bolt was fastened, tight. My mind went numb. There's no way out, kid. He chuckled hoarsely. His laugh echoed through the cramped house like the grind of a saw dot. In my desperation, I saw the kitchen window. One pane was already shattered. Only a ragged curtain remained. I clambered onto the sink, ignoring the shards that tore my cloak, and skinned my hands. Fresh blood oozed. Its metallic scent rushed into my nose. I squeezed through. Behind me, the blade slammed down. I crashed onto the wet ground outside the porch. My knees screamed in pain, but I didn't dare stop. I sprinted toward the forest. Dry leaves crunched sharply beneath my feet. The night wind howled like shrieks. Behind me, his heavy footsteps closed in. His voice bellowed, "Stop, you brat. You'll join my wife soon." I ran while sobbing. Tears mixed with the salty sting of sweat at the corner of my mouth. Branches whipped my face raw. I slipped. Mud soaked me. Its foul, metallic stench filled my lungs. But as the footsteps drew nearer, I forced myself up again. I charged forward with blind terror. At last, the lights of the townhouses glimmered. In the distance, I heard my parents calling frantically. The warmth of my father's arms wrapped me as I collapsed. My mother's choked sobs filled my ears. For the first time in my life, I saw true fear in their eyes. The police were called. They found the wooden house. In the kitchen, a woman's body lay lifeless on the floor. Blood soaked the tiles. Her dog was dead in the bathtub, but the man, the one who dragged his wife's corpse down the stairs and hunted me, was gone. He was never caught. His name stayed on the wanted list for years. And that Halloween night became the line that split my life in two. I was no longer the arrogant, reckless child, but from that night on, I also lost my childhood. Because every time the night wind howls through the door, I hear his voice, chilling and rasping. Who stole my candy? And I know, one day, he will find me in the dark. Episode 3. The Door Leading to the Nameless Floor. My name is Nick Sanders. When I was 13, my parents dragged me to a haunted house. It was an event hall, hosting a Halloween attraction on the outskirts of town. They thought it would be fun, a memorable family experience. But for me, that night brought no joy. It left only a haunting memory. The door that led to a floor no one would admit existed. From the outside, the building looked like an old cinema. The corrugated iron roof was rusting. The glass doors were covered in a film of dust. Inside, they had turned it into a maze. Flashing red lights, mannequins dangling on ropes, glowing pumpkins, speakers blasting blood-curdling screams. The smell of burning candles mixed with the cheap plastic odor of masks. It created a suffocating atmosphere. My younger brother was dressed as a pirate. My sister wore a fairy costume. They shrieked and laughed whenever someone in costume jumped out to scare them. My father roared with laughter. My mother clapped in delight. But I found it all ridiculous. I hated being treated like a child. I was 13. I no longer wanted to collapse in giggles over someone in a smelly rubber mask. But the deeper we went, the more uncomfortable I felt. The music was too loud. The flashing lights made my head pound. I hurried forward, leaving behind my siblings' screams and my father's laughter. All I wanted was to find the exit. And then I saw it. A loose black curtain hung at the end of the hallway. Beyond it, there was no light. No costumed actor, only a still, silent darkness. I pulled it aside slightly. I saw a narrow staircase descending. Into the ground, at the bottom of the stairs, stood a large iron door. Its paint was peeling. The word exit had faded until only a few streaks of white remained. No staff stood there. No rope blocked the way. As if that place wasn't meant for visitors. In my chest, my heart pounded. My ears rang. I didn't understand why I stepped down, only that some invisible force was pulling me. The sound of my sneakers echoed against the concrete walls, sharp and hollow. Cold air rose from the floor. It carried the smell of dampness, sharp, like rusted iron. I placed my hand on the iron handle. It was icy, slick, as if coated with someone's sweat. When I pulled hard, the hinges screeched. The sound was like metal slicing into my ears. On the other side wasn't an exit. It was a long, endless corridor, lit only by the flickering of a single exposed bulb. The walls were stained with water. The concrete floor was wet and freezing. The silence was so complete, I could hear my own breathing. I stepped back, meaning to turn around, but the iron door behind me slammed shut on its own. The crash shook the whole corridor. Then silence again. I grabbed the handle, locked tight, no way back. And so, I began walking forward, each step heavy as lead, into the floor that should never have existed. The hallway stretched endlessly. With each step, the sound of my wet shoes echoed. It was like footsteps trailing behind me. The air stank of mold, rotten dampness, sewer-like. Cold seeped into my lungs. It felt like inhaling stale smoke. Far ahead, the single bulb flickered, glowing, dying, leaving patches of darkness. Each flash revealed black smears on the wall, not water stains, and streaks, fingers marked, coated in something thick and black. The smell of rusty iron, metallic temps, blood. I stepped back. My trembling hand brushed the wall, sticky, cold, slick, like slime. I jerked away, raised it to my nose. A rancid stench shot into my brain. My stomach twisted. I gagged, retching dryly. No, impossible. This is staged, I whispered. But my voice echoed, swallowed, in seconds. No reply, only my heart. Thud, thud, hammers inside my skull. I walked deeper. The hall ended at a small room, the wooden door missing a panel. I pushed it lightly. The hinge shrieked. Inside, pitch black. Only faint hallway light leaked in dot in the corner, a pale lump, heaving. It moved. The light flickered. A creature crawled on all fours, skin white as candle wax, glossy, stretched over bone, hairless, head bald, jagged bone pushing through, limbs grotesquely long, joints sharp, spiked, nails scraped cement. A hideous screech, knives on chalkboard. Its eyes, not human, deep sockets, irises, yellow, reptilian, unblinking, fixed on me. I froze. Blood turned ice, body numb. Only when it made a sound, my throat seized. Not human, wind through a drainpipe. An animal's throat being slit. A rasping hiss. Kretschera. It crawled toward me. I stumbled back, spine to wall. The stench hit me. Rotting meat, decayed bone, acrid chemicals, like formalin. My throat burned. Eyes stung. Steps away. I spun to run, slipped, fell. My palm smacked into slime, freezing, slick, clinging like glue. I cried out, yanked my hand. Strands stretched, sticking. The creature lunged. Its hand seized my ankle, cold as steel, rigid nails, pierced skin. Blood seeped warm. Pain stabbed. Electric shocks through me. I kicked wildly. My heels cracked against bone. Hollow thuds. It didn't grunt, only growled. Echoes multiplied, as if dozens circled me. Desperate, I grabbed a brick, smashed its hand. A crack resounded. Black fluid spilled. The stench foul. It shrieked. The sound pierced my skull. I wrenched free. Blood streaming, squelching in my shoe. I bolted. The bulb above shattered. Darkness swallowed me. Behind the sound of crawling, fast, too fast. Nails raking cement. Screech, screech. Knives against stone. My heart battered. Breath ragged. Lungs aflame. Fear drove me on. At the end, a wooden door. I slammed it. Burst open. Tumbled inside. Empty. Except a mirror. Large. Against the wall. I staggered up. Searched for escape. Then froze. In the reflection myself. But not only me. Behind me, the creature, standing, upright, tall, emaciated, skin tight, gleaming, head tilted. Yellow reptile eyes glowed. I turned. Nothing. The room empty. But in the mirror, it advanced. Long strides. Limping. I screamed. Pressed. Against the wall. In the mirror, it grabbed my throat. Not me in the room, but I felt it. The icy grip strangled me. I clawed at plaster. Nails scraping. Chalk dust filled my nose. Air thinned. My lungs choked. Vision blurred. Ears ringing. In panic, I hurled the brick. The mirror shattered. Glass crashed loud. The image vanished. Air rushed back. My chest released. I collapsed. Coughing. The taste of blood metallic. I crawled to the door. Dragged myself up. Limped on. I knew stay a second longer, I'd never return to light. But then the hallway split. 2 branches. No signs. No exit. I froze. Cold sweat down my back. Behind me, the screech returned. Nails against cement. Closer. Asterisk. I stood between 2 pitch-dark corridors. Left or right. Both stretched endlessly, with no end in sight. The scraping footsteps behind me grew closer, every second. The cold rising from the cement floor clung to my skin, like thousands of frozen hands. In panic, I chose the left path at random. Pain stabbed my feet with each step. Blood seeped into my socks, but I didn't dare stop. My breath came in ragged bursts. My chest burned. I could hear the pounding of my blood in my ears, louder than the scream caught in my throat. The left hallway led to another iron door. I dashed toward it, fists pounding hard. The echoes spread, then sank back into silence. I twisted the handle. Locked. I punched. I screamed. I kicked again and again. The only reply was a steady thump from inside, as if someone were knocking. I froze. My hand slipped from the knob. The knocking continued, rhythmic, then turned into the sound of fingernails scraping. Screech, screech. The metal shrieked, raising goosebumps all over my body. Suddenly, the door creaked open, not by anyone turning the lock. A gap of darkness yawned wide. A chill gust seeped out, carrying the foul, damp stench of a long-sealed corpse. On the edge of the door, I could see streaks of dried, blackened blood. I stumbled back, spun, and ran. The corridor twisted endlessly. Every time I glanced behind, I saw that pale white creature crawling across the ceiling. Its glowing yellow eyes locked on me, clinging like some monstrous spider. Each scrape of its movement screeched, trailing the rancid stench of rotting flesh. I screamed, tears spilling down my face. Just as I thought it would seize me, I spotted a wooden door at the end of the corridor. Above it hung a glowing exit sign, the letters flickering like a beacon. I hurled myself forward, every last shred of strength crashing into the door. It burst open. Blinding white light engulfed me, burning my eyes. I collapsed to the floor, and I was back in the hall. Halloween music blasted. Red and green lights flashed. My mother stood nearby, holding my sister. My father barked loudly. "Nick, where have you been? We've been looking everywhere for you." I collapsed, trembling, unable to form words. I wanted to scream that I had just escaped a hellish basement, that there was a creature crawling on 4 limbs, that I had nearly suffocated in a mirror maze, but no sound came out, only choking sobs. My parents thought I was scared by the haunted house performance. They laughed it off and hugged me tight, but I knew what I had just lived through was no game. That night, I lay in bed with the lamp left on. In my ears, the sound still echoed. Screech, screech. My heart clenched as I stared at the ceiling. In the shadow beyond the reach of the light, 2 faint yellow dots floated. I blinked, and they were gone. Maybe just an illusion. But every night afterward, I saw them on the ceiling, in the bathroom mirror, even in the window pane. Always those yellow eyes, watching. Years passed. The old hall was demolished. They said there was no basement, no corridor at all, just a flat slab of cement. But I know. I set foot down there. I saw what should never be seen, and now, as I tell this story, my throat still feels strangled tight. I write in a dark room, lit only by my desk lamp. And in the reflection of my computer screen before me, I see behind my back a gaunt figure, skin deathly pale, crawling on all 4s, its yellow eyes blazing, shining back from a place that should not exist. It has found me. Episode 4. The Whisper Behind the Locked Door. My name is Claire Morgan, 21 years old. I rent an old apartment on the 4th floor, a red brick building in the middle of the city. The landlord handed me the key. He warned me with something strange before leaving. Never open the door at the end of the hallway. It's already locked. Just leave it that way. At that time, I laughed. A rundown apartment building, walls peeling, paint flaking. Most likely, it was just a storage room full of junk, or a place to keep pests out. I didn't pay much attention, but on the very first night, I heard the whisper. At first, it was faint, like wind slipping through the window cracks. I lay on the bed. The glow from the street lamp seeped through the curtain. Pale yellow shadows stretched across the ceiling. Suddenly, I heard it. A long sish, as if someone leaned right next to my ear, telling me to stay quiet. I jolted upright, heart pounding. The room was silent. I tried to reassure myself it must be leaky pipes. But when I pressed my ear against the wall, I clearly heard broken syllables, whispered in a hoarse voice. "Claire, open the door." Goosebumps spread across my skin. I turned on the light, stepped into the hallway. The ceiling bulb flickered. Casting a weak glow dot at the end of the hallway stood a black-painted wooden door. Its massive lock rusted. The whisper came from inside, steady, not echoing from any other room. I froze, ear pressed against the door. A harsh metallic odor seeped out from the crack beneath. For a split second, I heard it, fingernails scratching the wood from the inside. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I staggered back, heart pounding wildly, throat dry. That entire night, I didn't dare sleep. I sat, huddled in my room, eyes fixed on the door at the end of the hall. Through the gap in the curtain, the ceiling light flickered, and the whisper never stopped, sometimes near, sometimes far, like a breath curling around me. The next morning, I asked the old woman on the third floor. She stared at me, her cloudy eyes trembling. Then she shook her head. You've heard it already. Then, you won't last long either. I froze. A chill crawled down my spine, but instead of leaving, I felt compelled to find out. I knew that behind that door, there wasn't just dust or rats. Something was calling my name. Asterisk, I cannot ignore it. The whispers keep echoing in my head, even when daylight streams through the window. Even while making coffee, I can hear the faint call from the end of the hallway, like a breath slipping through the crack of the door. For 3 days straight, I tried to ignore it, but the more I ignored, the clearer it became. At night, the voice no longer whispered. It turned into repeated phrases. Claire, open the door. We are waiting. Clear as day, as if someone pressed their lips right to my ear. On the fourth night, I decided to test it. I brought a chair, set it before the black-painted door. The ceiling light still flickered. Its pale yellow glow spilled over the peeling paint, exposing cracked wood beneath. The rusted lock was thick, but there was a small gap at the bottom, just wide enough for cold air to seep through. I sat down, pressed my ear close to the floor. A foul stench poured out, the smell of damp rot, stagnant water, and a faintly sweet tempest of dried blood. I pinched my nose, straining to listen. Inside came the sound of light footsteps, dragging more than one person. Interspersed was a chorus of whispers, each hoarse voice blending with the others. No words were clear, just a buzzing murmur, like a hive split open. My throat went dry, cold sweat dripping down my spine. Suddenly, everything went silent. I was about to get up, when a woman's voice, clear yet choked, rose right at the crack of the door. Please, open for me. I fell backward, my heart pounding. That voice was unlike the hoarse whispers before. It was real, distinct, like a living person imprisoned inside. Is someone in there? I asked, trembling. A few seconds of silence, then came sobbing. Soft but sharp, like a blade slicing skin. The sobs twisted into laughter, shrill and warped, stretching into a mad cackle. Panic surged. I scrambled back to my room, slammed the door, dragged a chair against it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The desk lamp flickered, light and shadow shifting endlessly. In the mirror on the wall, I caught a glimpse of a woman, loose hair, her face pressed against the hallway door. But when I blinked, there was nothing, only dim emptiness. The next morning, I asked the old neighbor woman again. After listening, she sighed. Her trembling hands clutched the rosary tight. Long ago, that room belonged to a family of 3. The husband was a drunk. One night he went mad, locked the door, killed his wife and child, then hanged himself. No one ever cleared the room, just locked it up. But their souls never left. Anyone living on the 4th floor hears the whispers. Most leave within weeks. She looked straight at me, her clouded eyes glistening with tears. Girl, don't be foolish enough to answer. Once you respond, they'll know your name, and then they'll follow you for life. I shivered, but it was already too late. I had heard. I had spoken back. I had already let them know my name. That night, at the stroke of midnight, the whispers rose right at my ear. Not from the end of the hall, but inside my very room. I flicked on the light. The room was empty, but the voices kept going, repeating like a lullaby. Claire, open the door, open for us. I clutched my head, heart slamming against my ribs, and in my panic, I clearly heard the click of the lock on the black-painted door, as if someone was turning a key from the inside. I knew it was about to open. Asterisk that night, I sat in my room. The desk lamp trembled against the cracked wall. The clicking at the end of the hallway echoed steadily, beat by beat. I knew it wasn't imagination. Something was turning the lock from the inside. My hands shook as I gripped my phone, but when I lit up the screen, it showed only twisted words, smeared like spreading blood. "Open the door, Claire. We have waited so long," I screamed, threw the phone to the floor. At that exact moment, a sharp clack rang out. The latch at the end of the hallway released. The air in the building shifted entirely, freezing cold, as if it poured straight from a crypt. I stepped into the hallway. The stench hit me, metallic and foul, so strong it made me gag. The black paint wooden door stood ajar. A faint glow slipped out, a silvery light, like moonlight on a corpse. I didn't know why I kept moving forward. Perhaps something pulled me, or perhaps the voice itself hypnotized me. My breath came heavy. Each step echoed in the dead silence. When I was only a few steps away, I heard the chorus of whispers, dozens of voices, blending, twisting, pleading, giggling. I pushed the door. The room was pitch black, but in the dark, figures emerged. A woman with long hair, her face swollen and bruised, eye sockets hollow, a small child, mouth torn wide to the ears, and in the corner, a body dangling, swinging from a thick black rope. They all turned toward me, whispering in unison, "Welcome home, Claire," I screamed, stumbled backward, but the door slammed shut behind me. The room shrank, the walls closing in, pale hands stretched out of the walls, icy cold, seizing my shoulders, my wrists, my ankles. The stench of mold and fresh blood filled my lungs, choking me, burning my eyes. The long-haired woman leaned down to my face. Her breath was rotten, hissing, "You spoke the name. Now you belong to us." I thrashed, desperate. In that final moment, I remembered the old neighbor's warning, never answer. Once they know your name, they will follow you forever. But it was too late. I already had. A frozen hand clamped over my eyes. I sank into darkness. When I woke, I was on my bed. Morning sunlight slipped through the window, birds singing outside it. All felt like a dream. I rubbed my eyes, trembling as I sat up. The door at the end of the hallway was shut again, the rusty lock untouched. I told myself, just a dream, just a dream. But then I looked into the mirror. The reflection was not me. It was the long-haired woman, face swollen and bruised, eyes black and hollow. She smiled crookedly, lips barely moving. From within the glass, I heard the whisper, "We are one now." I screamed, but in the mirror, my mouth did not open. Only she smiled, and behind her, dozens of figures stood, eyes rolled white, all whispering my name. Since then, every night, I no longer know. Am I awake or dreaming? I hear them in every corner. In the pipes, through the cracks of the doors, in the mirrors, even inside my own breath. The apartment still stands, the building still crumbling, but the door at the end of the hallway is never truly locked anymore. It only waits for someone new, someone to hear the whispers, to answer, and to replace me. Episode 5, Footsteps on the Abandoned Rooftop. My name is Ethan Rowe. I once lived in an old dormitory for university students, a 7-story building built in the 1960s. Peeling paint, damp hallways, fluorescent lights that always flickered, as if about to die. But for a poor student like me, it was the only place I could afford. The day I signed the lease, the dorm manager handed me the key. She gave me a very strange warning: never go up to the rooftop. No matter what you hear, never set foot up there. I laughed. I thought she was just trying to scare students, to stop them from sneaking up onto the roof, but that smile faded the very first night. Around 2 in the morning, while I was studying, thud, thud, echoed from above the ceiling. Footsteps, slow, heavy, like someone pacing back and forth, on the top floor hallway. The problem was, the building had no 8th floor. The 7th was the last, and above that, only the abandoned concrete roof, locked shut. I tried to tell myself it might be a cat, or the wind rattling the roof sheets, but the sound wasn't like that. It was steady, rhythmic, exactly like a person walking, and every time I turned off the light, the footsteps grew closer, right above my head. On the 3rd night, I couldn't take it anymore. I crept out into the hallway. The air was icy cold, thick with mold, and the temps of rusted metal. I looked up. There was the door leading to the rooftop, a huge iron slab, chained with rusted links. Yet from the other side, I could clearly hear the dragging footsteps, mixed with something that sounded like whispers. I pressed my ear against the freezing metal. A deep, hoarse voice, lost in the wind, murmured, "Don't come up, or else you'll stay." I froze. My hands trembled. Sweat broke out, even though the hallway air was frigid. But as I stepped back, the footsteps suddenly burst into a run, pounding straight toward the iron door, and then bang. The whole door shuddered, chains clattering violently. Panicked, I bolted back to my room, locked the door tight, but all night, I could still hear those footsteps, racing in circles above the roof, never stopping, as if waiting for the chance to drag me up to the rooftop. I had planned to ignore it, but the following nights, the footsteps didn't stop. They lingered, like a haunting melody. During the day, I tried to study, tried to talk with friends, but the moment I closed my eyes, in my ears echoed the steady thump, thump. On the 5th night, I woke up at 3 in the morning. The footsteps were no longer above the ceiling. They were right in the hallway of the 7th floor, outside my door, slow, steady, as if someone was passing each door, one by one. I held my breath, pressed my ear to the wall. A sharp stench of rusty iron filled my nose, mixed with the damp, rancid smell. The footsteps stopped, right in front of my room. For a long while, there was complete silence. Then, knock, 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 knock. 3 loud knocks rang out. I trembled, clutched the doorknob, my eyes fixed on the crack. No shadow, just the dark hallway, the flickering fluorescent light. But as I stepped back, a hoarse whisper seeped through the gap. "Go up, to the rooftop." Now, I panicked, retreated to the corner of my room. I couldn't sleep anymore. At first light, I decided I had to know the truth. That afternoon, I sneaked up the stairs, to the iron door leading to the roof. The chains were old, rust spreading like dried blood. I gave it a slight push, and suddenly, the entire lock fell apart, as if it had been broken long ago. The door swung open, a piercing screech. A gust of cold air spilled out, reeking of damp cement and rotting moss. I stepped onto the rooftop. The place was deserted, concrete stained and cracked, broken wires dangling, puddles of black water left from the rain. The wind carried with it a strange burnt odor, like scorched hair. Step by step, my shoes echoed, thump, thump across the emptiness. Everything was still, until my eyes caught the far corner of the wall. A figure dot, tall, thin, hunched, skin pale, almost glowing under the gray sky. A mess of hair covering most of its face. It stood motionless, its back to me. My chest tightened. I stammered, "Who's there?" The figure didn't answer, but the sound was clear. Footsteps, thump, thump, coming from it, though it remained perfectly still. A chill swept through my spine. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted. I could only stare. Then, slowly, it turned its head. A torn face, flesh gray and rotting, bulging white eyes, mouth split wide to the ears. It didn't move, yet the footsteps thundered across the rooftop. Thump, thump, echoing from all directions, as if dozens of people surrounded me. I screamed, stumbled back, but each time I moved, the figure appeared elsewhere, closer. It didn't walk. Yet, somehow, space twisted, placing it right in front of me. At last, my back hit the wall. The stench of burnt flesh forced bile up my throat. The figure leaned close, its decayed skin peeling off in chunks. It opened its mouth, its breath foul, like a rotting carcass under the sun. Go down. You can't escape. I bolted, rushed to the iron door, but it had shut tight, the chains back, as if they had never fallen. I pounded, I screamed, my hands bleeding. Behind me, the footsteps multiplied, enclosing me. I was sure dozens, hundreds of figures were closing in. In a moment of despair, the wind surged, snapped a loose cable. It whipped the ground, sparking blue flames. The pale figures vanished in the flash. The iron door swung open. I hurled myself down the stairs, tumbling, bruised and battered. When I finally reached my room, I locked the door tight. But the moment I sat on my bed, and my ears echoed clearly the slow thump, thump, not from the roof anymore, but right in the hallway. I locked the door tight, heart pounding, ears still glued to that sound. Thump, thump. Slow, heavy footsteps echoed outside the hallway of the 7th floor. With each beat, the walls trembled faintly, like the drums of a soul-calling ritual. I held my breath. The steps stopped right in front of my door. A long silence stretched on, so tense, I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then knock, 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 3 knocks. Exactly like the night before. I trembled, pressed my eye to the peephole. No one. The hallway was pitch, fluorescent lights flickering. But at the far end, in the flashes of light, I saw a tall, thin figure, hunched, taking one step after another, toward me. I jolted back, falling onto the floor. Right then, a hoarse voice whispered beside my ear, even though I was alone, go down now. I didn't understand. What did go down mean? Down to the ground floor, or to some other floor? In panic, I flung the door open, bolted into the hallway. Pitch black. The lights were out. I dashed down the stairs, my footsteps echoing, mingling with the thump, thump, right on my heels. No matter how fast I ran, the sound stayed close. At the ground floor, the emergency exit was locked tight. I banged, I screamed, but the door wouldn't budge. Water streaked across the hallway, the stench of mold rising, and in the glass reflection of the door, I saw behind me dozens of pale figures. No eyes, no mouths, only hollow sockets. I panicked, rushed further down. The spiral stairs led downward still, but this was not the basement I had known. The steps were cracked, covered in moss. Stretching endlessly, cold air seeped out heavy as ice, each breath fogging white. Deeper down, I saw another iron door, slightly ajar. From inside came footsteps, whispers, and a stifling burnt odor. I hesitated, but above me, the thump, thump, drew closer. With no choice, I pushed the door, stepped in. Inside was a concrete hallway, stretching forever, lined with dozens of doors, identical to my dorm. I walked, and realized each door was ajar, revealing inside my room, my bed, my desk, my books. But in every room sat another me, some studying, some crying, some screaming, pounding their heads against the wall. I bolted down the hall in terror. All the versions of me turned their heads at once, empty-eyed lips, whispering the same phrase, "Stay here, forever." The sound rose into a chorus, so loud my ears rang. I screamed, covered my ears, but it was useless. The whole hallway shook. Doors flung open all at once, and countless me stepped out, dragging their feet, closing in. In that moment, I understood. The rooftop, the footsteps. It was all a trap, Once you heard them and followed, you were dragged into this place, a non-existent floor, where the curious were trapped, becoming endless, twisted copies, forever walking, creating the footsteps in the night. The tall, thin figure appeared at the end of the hall. It didn't move, but footsteps thundered from it, filling the space. It raised a grotesquely long arm, pointing at me. Its voice screeched, like metal clawing. "Glass, it's your turn, Ethan." Dozens of pale hands seized me, pulling me into the whirlpool of my own copies. I screamed until my throat tore, but the sound dissolved into the pounding footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. They say that dorm was demolished a few years later, but late at night, if you pass the old foundation and press your ear to the ground, you can still hear the sound below. Slow, heavy footsteps, echoing without end, and sometimes, between silences, a young man's voice whispers, "My name is Ethan Rowe. Please save me." Episode 6. The Endless Hallway. My name is Olivia Kane. I work the night shift for a security company. The job is simple: patrol an old office building on the outskirts, record in the logbook every 3 hours, then stay in the break room until morning. The building has 8 floors, plus a basement that holds file archives, and some technical rooms. I've always hated the basement. The air down there is thick. The musty smell seems to seep into the skin. The neon lights are weak. Their bluish-white glow casts long, distorted shadows. On the stained concrete walls, water drips from broken pipes, echoing everywhere like the pulse of a sick heart. One night, around 2 in the morning, I went down to the basement. At that moment, my phone lost signal. I thought it was because underground levels block reception. But the moment I stepped down, I realized the hallway tonight was different. Instead of the familiar row of rooms, what lay before me was a long, endless corridor. No lights at the end, no signs. The concrete walls were blotched, the tiled floor damp and slick, as if freshly mopped with diluted blood. I turned back, but the stairs had vanished, leaving only a mute wall. The stench of rust hit my nose. It burned my throat dry. I pulled out my flashlight and swept it along the path. The dim yellow beam fell upon rusted iron doors on both sides. Each door bore a number, but all of them were just zeros, repeated and carved deep like claw marks. Trembling, I stepped forward. The tap of my shoes echoed on the wet floor. Merging with my own heavy breaths, I felt someone behind me, but when I turned, the hallway was empty. I tried opening one of the doors. It screeched with a piercing shrill. Inside was a small, cracked-walled room. On the floor stood only a wooden table, and on it, a fractured mirror. In the mirror, the reflection was not me, but a man in a security uniform, his neck bruised, purple, as if freshly hanged. Panicking, I slammed the door shut. My heart pounded wildly. But when I looked up, the numbers on the doors had changed. Every door now bore my name: Olivia, Olivia, Olivia. The freezing air clenched around my chest, suffocating me. From the far end of the corridor came footsteps, slow, heavy, thud, thud. The sound didn't echo. It was as if it came from inside my own head. I screamed and bolted down the hallway, but the path never ended. Each time I thought I'd reached the end, it was only another turn, leading into another hallway. Still the same doors carved with my name. Still the stench of diluted blood hanging thick in despair. I heard a whisper right behind my ear. "Tonight, you will never leave here again." I don't remember how long I had been running. My breath was heavy, my throat raw, my chest burning, but the hallway stretched on endlessly. The neon lights above flickered, sometimes glaring white, sometimes dying out completely. Each blackout left me in suffocating darkness. It swallowed me whole. When the light flared again, The doors changed. Sometimes they bore my name, carved in red, like fresh blood. Sometimes they carried my photograph, the same ID photo I once took for the security file. But in the picture, my face was distorted, my eyes hollow black. My lips quivered, whispering something I could not hear. Fear shook my legs, but I kept walking. The acrid smell of rusted metal clung to the air. It mingled with the stench of burnt flesh. Cold gusts seeped through the cracks of the doors. Each carried a raspy hiss, like someone with a slit throat still trying to speak. I stopped before a half-open door. Something compelled me to push it wider. Inside, a dim bulb lit a small room. Sitting on a chair was me. It was me, in tonight's uniform, hair disheveled, eyes bulging, mouth sewn shut with black thread. I recoiled in horror. The corpse jerked its head toward me. Its clouded eyes bled. It clawed at the stitches, ripping them apart. Blood poured out as it screamed in my own voice. "Stay here, Olivia. Stay with us." I shrieked, slammed the door, and bolted. The hallway twisted alive. It stretched, bent, warped. Walls dripped with damp mold, cold and sticky against my skin like the sweat of the dead. The footsteps returned. Thud, thud, not one, but many. A procession behind me. I didn't look back, but I felt their eyes piercing my neck. I lunged at another door. Its hinges rusted, but unlocked. I shoved it open. Inside filing cabinets, but no documents. Every drawer brimmed with fingernails, clumps of tangled hair, bloody finger bones. One drawer held security name tags. Daniel, Mark, Helen, Sarah, all young faces, all with hollow, lifeless eyes. Then every tag clattered to the floor, the sound shrill, unbearable. They shifted, arranging themselves letter by letter, forming a single name, Olivia Kane. Panic surged. I staggered back, fell onto the wet floor. The hallway was no longer lit by neon. Only dim red glows remained, like dying embers beneath ash. They revealed bloody footprints smeared across the tiles. From all sides, whispers rose, dozens, hundreds, voices blending into one. "Stay, Olivia. Stay with us." I covered my ears, but the voices echoed inside my skull. Hands burst from the tiles, pale and bony. They clawed my legs, nails stabbing flesh, cold, slimy, reeking of rot. I thrashed, kicked, screamed, until my voice broke. Then, a door, at the end of the hallway. Unlike the others, wooden, pale blue, brand new, a gleaming brass handle. No name, no number. The red glow bathed it, making it shine like the only escape. I screamed, dragged my bleeding legs, raced toward it behind me. Footsteps pounded faster. Thud, 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 hyper-chid laughter chasing me. I seized the handle. The door flung open. White light burst out, blinding, burning. I didn't think. I hurled myself inside. The door slammed shut, and darkness swallowed everything. The white light made my eyes ache. Slowly, I opened them. I was standing in an empty room. 4 white-painted walls, no cracks, no lamps, yet glowing, as if the light seeped from the walls themselves. In front of me was a giant mirror. It reached the ceiling. It spanned the entire wall. I saw my reflection, hair disheveled, skin pale, clothes soaked with sweat, smeared with blood from scratches. I stepped closer, trying to steady myself, but the image in the mirror did not follow. It stood still, hollow black eyes, the corners of its mouth twisted into a crooked smile. My heart clenched tight. I stepped back. The reflection stayed put. Suddenly, it raised its hand, tapped lightly on the glass. Toke, toke, 3 dry knocks. The sound pierced into my skull. I realized it was the knocking I had been hearing all along. Not from the hallway, not from the rooms, but from me. From the other side of the mirror. I panicked. I turned to flee, but the 4 walls closed in, smooth, without doors. Only the mirror remained, and in the mirror, I began to move. It opened its mouth. A hoarse, distorted voice echoed. Its lips never moved. You have stepped into where no one should come. This hallway only ends when someone takes your place. Now, I go out, you go in, I screamed. No, I'm not one of you. The reflection didn't answer. It pressed its hand against the mirror. The icy glass trembled. Its surface rippled. I was pulled forward. The cold seeped into my skin, sank deep into my bones. In the final moment, I looked around, searching for any escape. But there was only the mirror. From afar, footsteps echoed again. Toke, toke, this time from every direction, walls, floor, even inside my chest. A force yanked me through. I fell face first onto freezing ground. When I lifted my head, I was back. The same hallway, but everything was different. The doors no longer bore my name. They were blank, covered in thick dust. I turned back. On the wall behind me stood my reflection, but not me. It smiled, slowly turned away, walked into a blazing corridor, and vanished. I was left trapped here. I walked, endlessly. The hallway stretched on. I tried opening doors. Inside was only suffocating darkness, cold, and layered whispers. I realized all those who vanished here. They were inside those dark rooms, and I would be the next. They say the office building was torn down long ago, but in the city, whispers still linger. On blackout nights, at the abandoned lot, you can hear footsteps echoing from underground, slow, heavy, endless, and sometimes, if you stand too close, you'll hear a woman's voice by your ear, trembling, desperate. I am Olivia Kane. Please, open the door, and let me out. Episode 7. The Laughter in the Vent. My name is Marcus Hale. I work as an HVAC technician. Most of my contracts are in old apartment buildings. One of them was Harborview Apartments, a building from the 1970s, infamous for its maze-like ventilation system. On my first day there, I felt something was wrong. Not the structure, not the dim lights in the halls. It was the air, heavy, thick with mildew, and another smell I couldn't place. A strange mix of burnt hair and rust. The residents spoke little. They passed me without eye contact. One old woman tugged at my sleeve. She whispered, "Every night, there's laughter on the ceiling. Don't listen. If you listen, you won't come back." I laughed it off. Thought she was just paranoid. But that night, in apartment 503, I understood what she meant. The place was empty. Dim yellow light spilled across peeling walls. Cracks in the ceiling exposed the old air ducts. I was tightening screws when I heard it. Something inside the vent. At first, just the whistle of air. Then whispers, like many voices murmuring at once. I froze, listening. The sound shifted, turned into giggles. Not one voice, but many. Male, female, old, young. The laughter echoed in. The ducts distorted, but clear enough to raise goosebumps all over me. I lifted my flashlight, shined it into the vent. The beam caught only dust, layers and layers of it. Then something moved. A pale hand, unnaturally long fingers, slowly pulling back into the dark. I staggered away, heart pounding. A burnt, acrid smell drifted out, like charred flesh. Then the laughter again, but this time, right by my ear. Even though I was several feet away, I slammed the cover shut, ready to run. My hand gripped the doorknob, but behind me, the vent burst open. A metallic crash. A young woman's voice sang out, distorted, mocking. "Marcus, come play with us." I turned. In the black slit of the duct, dozens of eyes blinked open, wide, glowing white, all of them staring straight at me. I stood frozen. The bloodshot white eyes in the dark duct followed my every move. My breathing grew rapid. My ears rang. I wanted to run, but my legs felt glued to the floor. The laughter rose again, frantic now, mixed with sobs and wheezing. A putrid stench poured out, thick, acrid, like the charred remains of animals. Summoning all my courage, I pulled out my headlamp and gloves. Then I removed the cover completely. "Just rats," I muttered. But my heart pounded like it would burst. I crawled in. The space was suffocatingly tight. Cold metal pressed against my skin. Dust coated everything, mixed with rust. The taste burned my throat raw. I moved inch by inch. The trembling beams swept across pitch-black walls, scratched walls. The scratches weren't from rats. They were deep, long, like fingernails. The sounds grew louder, hissing, whispering, and sometimes clear voices. "Marcus, hurry up, we're waiting for you." I clenched my teeth, pushed forward faster. The ducts twisted endlessly, leading me deeper. Further away from the building, the deeper I went, the stronger the stench grew, burning, seared my lungs, made me gag. I reached a junction. A widening dot in my beam swept across, and I froze. Piles of belongings, shoes, watches, rings, ID cards, splattered with blood. On a torn scrap of paper, Sarah Collins, resident of room 503. I remembered that name. The girl who vanished 3 years ago, reported in the news. Behind the pile was a body, stiff, curled, skin clinging to bone. The mouth hung open. No sound came. The eyes had rotted away. Yet in the dark, I felt them staring straight at me. I backed away. A sound creaked behind me. Thud, thud, thud. Something crawling, on hands and knees. I spun around. A face emerged, gaunt, pale, lips torn to shreds. It grinned. Giggles echoed down the shaft. Then more faces crowded in, bulging white eyes, mouths split wide, grinning endlessly. They didn't crawl with their hands. They used their heads, banging them against the metal. Sharp, sickening, thuds.matted. Hair scraped the walls. Peeling flesh smeared the ducts. I screamed, scrambled forward. The shaft shredded my elbows. Blood smeared as I clawed onward. The laughter chased me, now far, now near, sometimes right in my ear. I turned down another branch, praying for an exit, but instead, a wide cavity, pitch black. Inside, pale shadows floated. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They stood shoulder to shoulder, motionless, heads bowed. My beam touched them, and all at once, they snapped their heads up. Torn faces, hollow eyes, gaping mouths. A single chorus of laughter, deafening, shattering. The sound ripped at my eardrums. I dropped my lamp. Its beam rolled across the hollow, illuminating the sea of faces. They crawled toward me, fast as insects. Skulls thudding against the metal. Thud, thud, thud. A nightmarish rhythm. I thrashed, scrambled back. Sweat and blood slicked the steel. Ahead, a sliver of light. An opening. I lunged, slamming with all my strength, bursting through the cover, crashing onto a cold, hard floor. Pain racked my body, but I forced my head up. The room was dark, lit only by a dying bulb. Above me, the vent rattled violently. The laughter poured out, shrill, relentless. Then a woman's voice, warped, crystal clear. "Marcus, you haven't left here yet." I lay sprawled on the floor of the dark room. My whole body ached. The laughter still echoed from the vent above. It stretched, distorted, as if the duct itself were alive. I struggled to stand. Trembling, I searched for the switch. The yellow bulb flicked on, casting a faint glow. The room was empty, walls peeling. The smell of mold mixed with scorched flesh. On the old table lay a stack of papers. I stepped closer, hands shaking. I turned them over. They were resident files. All the missing people from the past 20 years. Their photos faint. Their eyes blank. At the very bottom, the newest sheet. The ink still wet. Marcus Hale, technician. Missing since August 15th. I flung it away. My chest tightened, my heart pounding. The vent rattled above, a metallic clack. The cover fell, clattering to the floor. Pale arms stretched out. Bony fingers clawed the ground. Blood smeared across the floor. Then, a face. My face. Twisted, hollow sockets. Mouth torn wide to the ears. It laughed. My laugh. The one my mother once kept on tape. "I am you," it said. The voice cracked, like sound tearing through metal. I pressed against the wall. It dragged itself out. The same protective suit, stained with dried blood. Hair matted, white eyes fixed on mine. This place needs laughter to exist. Whoever hears it must replace. The words were heavy. I understood. The building was alive. It fed on laughter. And now it was my turn. The laughter rose. Dozens, hundreds, voices shrieking in chorus. I covered my ears. It pierced my skull. My vision blurred. My brain felt ready to burst. I lunged for the door, the knob frozen. I twisted until my hand bled. It would not budge. Behind me, the other me stepped out. Its gait uneven, its grin splitting wider. Each step pounded. Thud, thud, thud. I screamed. Kicked the walls. The bulb flickered, then burst. Darkness swallowed the room. A faint red glow seeped from the vent. In that final flash I saw them. Dozens of faces. Men, women, children, all laughing. Mouths gaping too wide. Flesh splitting. Teeth and blood spilling. A freezing hand wrapped my neck. It squeezed tight. I tried to scream, but only laughter came. A broken laugh, not mine. The stench of burning flesh filled my lungs. Then, darkness, they say. Harborview Apartments was abandoned. The last residents fled after a piping incident. No one spoke of the truth, but at night, if you pass room 503, you will hear it. Laughter, giggling, warped, endless, and sometimes, a whisper. Clear as day. I am Marcus Hale. I crawled in there, and never came back out. Episode 8. Room number 9 is always locked. My name is Alina Brooks. I used to work the night shift as a receptionist. It was at a small roadside hotel, called Moonlight Inn. The hotel had 10 rooms. It stood isolated from any neighborhood. Only the occasional traveler stopped by to rest. All the rooms were rented at least a few times a week, except one. Room 9. Its door was always locked. The paint faded. The brass number 9 tarnished and rusty. The booking log never listed a single guest. Whenever I asked the manager, he would only shake his head. His reply was always short. Not for rent. Don't touch it. At first, I didn't care. But the night shift was long. Empty hallways. Flickering yellow bulbs. The wind howling through cracks. Curiosity could easily devour sanity. One night, around 3 in the morning, I was sitting at the desk. I heard a sound. A faint clack, clack, echoing from the second-floor hallway. The one with room 9. I grabbed a flashlight and went up. The air was thick. The stench of mold mixed with old paint. The ceiling lights flickered weakly. As I neared the end of the hallway, I heard breathing, slow, deep, as if someone were standing right behind the door of room 9. I pressed my ear to it. My heart pounded. Someone was inside. The dragging breaths carried a rank odor, like dried blood, like rotting wood. The smell seeped through the crack. I jolted back. Then laughter, soft, giggling, but it carried down the empty corridor. I swung my flashlight. No one. Yet the door of room 9 trembled, as if someone inside was gently knocking. Thud, 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 I whispered. Is someone in there? Silence. Then a voice floated out. A little girl's voice. Small, clear. Please open the door. It's so dark. I'm scared. I froze. Goosebumps surged across my skin. This hotel had no children. The door shook harder, violently, as if it would burst from its hinges. A nauseating stench poured out. I gagged. The girl's voice twisted. It became guttural. A scream. "Open it. Let me out." Panic surged. I bolted down the hall, back to the front desk. Behind me, the pounding grew furious. Each slam reverberated through the building, deafening. That night, I didn't close my eyes. Not once. From that moment, I knew. Room 9 wasn't just not for rent. It was holding something, and it was waiting for someone to open the door. After the first night, hearing the little girl screaming. I thought I would quit, but the next morning, when pale sunlight shone through the reception desk window, it felt as if everything had just been a nightmare. The manager asked casually, "Quiet night shift, right?" I opened my mouth to speak, but his eyes were strange, cold, as if he already knew what I wanted to say. I swallowed it back. Nothing, quiet. But it didn't stop there. The following nights, exactly at 3 a.m., I always heard the thud, thud. Steady sounds from the second floor, heavy breathing. The smell of dried blood, mixed with rotting wood, seeped down through the door, cracks to the desk. I tried to ignore it, but my ears grew sharper. Even the smallest sound made my heart race. Then once, while checking the camera system, I discovered something terrifying. On the blurry black and white screen, right in front of room 9's door, appeared the figure of a little girl, long hair covering her face, wearing a stained white dress. She stood still for hours, unmoving. But when I zoomed in, the girl raised her head. Her eyes were pure white, lips cracked open. A smile stretched to her ears. The camera glitched, then went completely dark. Cold. Sweat drenched me. From that day, I couldn't sleep anymore. The moment I closed my eyes, I heard the girl whisper in my ear, "Alina, let me out. I'm so cold." At first, the whisper was distant, but gradually clearer, until I could hear it even when standing outside on the street, at home, even in dreams. It clung to me, burrowed into my brain, impossible to drive away. I started dreaming of the endless second-floor hallway. I kept walking, ceiling lights flickering, walls dripping red like blood. At the end of the hallway always stood door 9. I reached for the knob, but could never open it, and behind the door, the giggle of a little girl echoed, binding me like a rope. On the 7th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the old keyring hanging behind the desk and went upstairs. The hallway was freezing, wind seeping through the cracks, carrying a nauseating stench. In front of door 9. I stood still, my hands trembling. "You mustn't." The manager's warning echoed in my head, but then the girl's voice whispered again, sweet as honey. "Open it. Just a little. I'll be quiet." The lock was rusted, paint peeling. I tried each key. The first 3 didn't fit. On the 4th, a dry click rang out. The door shivered, the hinges groaning. At that moment, an icy draft rushed into my face, carrying the overwhelming stench of rotting flesh that made me retch. I staggered back a step, but from the gap, a small pale hand reached out, thin fingers with long black nails. It clamped tightly onto my hand, cold as ice. A childish but growling voice spoke, "Don't go. You're the only one who hears me." Panicking, I yanked my hand back. My skin tore, blood dripping down my wrist, but the hand still gripped hard. I screamed, kicking the door with all my strength. The kick slammed the door shut. The fingers vanished, leaving only a smeared trail of blood on the wood. I ran back to the desk, my whole body shaking. That entire night, knocking echoed endlessly through the hotel. Thud, thud, steady, like a heartbeat. When dawn came, I looked at the wound on my hand. 10 black nail marks carved deep into my skin. Even after I washed away the blood, they remained etched, unyielding. And I knew for certain, if I stayed here one more night, room 9 would open completely, and I would never walk out again. Asterisk. I am no longer myself. After that 7th night, sleep vanished completely. Only the sound of knocking. Childish laughter echoing endlessly in my head. I tried to quit the job, but whenever I left the hotel, I still saw her, the little girl in a white dress, standing by the roadside, hair covering her face, her bony finger pointing straight at me. In the end, I understood. There was no running, only facing it. On the 10th night, I carried a large flashlight and an old kitchen knife. The clock struck 3 a.m. The second-floor hallway was pitch black, the bulbs completely dead, only the beam of the flashlight sweeping across, casting jagged shadows on peeling walls, streaks of black water seeping down. The stench was nauseating. The moment I stepped forward, I nearly vomited. The door to room 9 stood there, old, rusted, its brass number blackened. On the wooden surface still lingered the bloodstains from before. I no longer trembled. I knew if I didn't open it, it would keep knocking, keep whispering, until I went mad. I slid the key into the lock. Click, a dry, sharp sound. The hinges creaked. Icy air blasted straight into my face. The door opened. Inside was thick, suffocating darkness, the stench of rot bursting out violently. I raised the flashlight. The trembling beam swept across blood-smeared walls, a floor littered with debris and strange markings, but in the middle of the room stood a decaying wooden bed. Upon it, a little girl sat curled up. She wore a white dress, long hair drooping to cover her face. Her small hands clutched the edge of the bed, nails long and black. I froze, my throat tightening shut. "WH, who are you?" My voice cracked. The girl slowly raised her head. Her eyes were pure white, her lips torn wide. A smile stretched to her ears. Her childish voice echoed, distorted, as if rising from beneath water. "I used to be here. Before this hotel was built, they buried me beneath the foundation, then built this room on top. You are the first to open the door." I stepped back, gripping the knife tight, but the floor began to crack, splitting apart. From the gaps, dozens of pale hands shot up, clutching at my legs. Twisted faces appeared, men, women, children, all smiling, eyes rolled white, teeth jagged. Laughter erupted, drowning out my screams. The air grew heavy as lead, the stench of blood and decay suffocating my lungs. The little girl stepped down from the bed, slowly approaching. With each step, her nails scraped the wooden floor, screeching horribly. She bent close to my face, her breath icy, stinking of rot, making me stagger. "You'll take my place, won't you?" The whisper was soft but unmistakable. I screamed, slashing wildly with the knife, but the blade passed through her small body, as if through air. In that instant, I lost balance, toppling backward. Immediately, the hands beneath the floor dragged me down. I howled until my voice broke, clinging desperately to the edge of the bed. Laughter erupted all at once, manic, relentless. The little girl leaned down, her smile splitting wider. "I'm free now, and you'll stay behind." I was dragged into the pit of darkness. Shadows swallowed me whole. My final breath mingled with endless laughter. The next day, the hotel manager reported, night shift employee Alina Brooks had gone missing. The police came, but found no trace. Room 9 remained locked tight, thick with dust. The hotel still operates, but anyone working the night shift after me tells the same. Exactly at 3 a.m. From the end of the second-floor hallway comes the sound of knocking. Thud, thud, thud. Then a hoarse, trembling female voice echoes through the crack of the door. "I am Alina. Please open the door and let me out."